The Bell Jar was published in London on the 14th of January, 1963, under the pseudonym Victoria Lucas. 26 days later, on the 11th of February, the author of The Bell Jar killed herself in her London flat by putting her head in a gas oven while her two small children slept in the next room. She had set up bread and milk by their beds in case they woke first. She had sealed the kitchen door with damp tea towels so that the gas would not reach the children's room. She was 30 years old. The novel she had written under a pseudonym was, in nearly every chapter, a fictionalized account of her own previous suicide attempt at the age of 20. The Bell Jar, in other words, is a novel in which the author rehearses, on the page, the death that would arrive 3 weeks later. Most readings of the book do not yet seem to have caught up with that fact. This is not a video about Sylvia Plath the suicide. There are many of those. This is a video about Sylvia Plath the novelist, the writer who took, with extraordinary technical control, a teenage breakdown and turned it into the clearest single account of a depressive crisis ever written in English. The Bell Jar is not, primarily, a tragic biography. It is a piece of writing. And the most important thing about it is how well it is written. The book is narrated by a 19-year-old college student named Esther Greenwood. She is from a small town outside Boston. She has won, in the summer of 1953, a guest editorship at a women's magazine in New York City. She spends a month in Manhattan attending cocktail parties, sitting through fashion editorials, eating crab meat avocados, going on bad dates with bad men, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, losing the ability to feel that any of it is real to her. The opening chapters are funny. They are arch. They are written with a kind of high satirical comic prose that owes something to J.D. Salinger, and something to Mary McCarthy, and something to nobody else. Esther's observations of New York are some of the sharpest descriptions of post-war American capitalism that any novelist has produced. What changes is not the world. It is Esther. She goes home to Massachusetts at the end of the magazine internship. She is supposed to be writing a thesis on James Joyce. She finds, suddenly, that she cannot read. The letters on the page have detached from their meanings. She finds that she cannot sleep. She finds that her body has, without her consent, stopped responding to ordinary cues, hunger, weariness, social pleasure. She finds, after a few weeks, that she cannot speak to her own mother without thinking of cutting her own wrists. She tries to end her own life. She is found, after 3 days, half dead in a crawl space under the family house, having taken her mother's entire supply of sleeping pills. She is hospitalized. She is given, in the New England State Mental Institution where she is sent, the electroconvulsive therapy that was the standard treatment of the period. She slowly, with great difficulty, begins to recover. That is the surface of the book. Esther's journey, in the original published edition, ends ambiguously on the threshold of release from the hospital, with a sense that she is patched, retreaded, and approved for the road, not healed. But here is the part the famous suicide framing obscures. The Bell Jar is, technically, a comic novel. It is, sentence by sentence, one of the funniest American novels written in the 1950s. The humor is part of how the Depression actually works. Esther is not a passive sufferer. She is, in her early descriptions of New York fashion editors, of suburban Massachusetts dating mores, of medical students learning to deliver babies, an extraordinarily mordant narrator. She is sharper than the world around her. The Bell Jar of the title, the metaphor that Plath uses for the experience of severe depression, is precisely the experience of being inside a transparent glass container, watching everyone else move around in what should be the open air. You can see them. They can see you. You cannot quite breathe. This is the great technical achievement of the book. The Bell Jar metaphor is not just a metaphor. The entire prose of the novel is constructed to reproduce its effect on the reader. Esther's voice gets steadily flatter, drier, more distant as the depression closes around her. The funny chapters are funny in a particular way, a way that is already predistorted, already too sharp. By the time the novel reaches its central crisis, the prose has thinned almost to transparency. You are not, as a reader, watching a girl lose her mind. You are inside the Bell Jar with her. Plath has put you there with a series of tiny, perfectly engineered prose decisions. That is what writers mean when they call The Bell Jar a great novel. It is not because the suicide is interesting. It is because the writing makes you feel what cannot, by any other means, be transmitted. You did not know this, or most people did not, until the journals were published in full in 2000. Plath wrote The Bell Jar in the spring and early summer of 1961 in a small flat in London. She was 28. She was married to the English poet Ted Hughes. She had a one-year-old daughter, Frida. She was working on what she called her project in the mornings, while Hughes minded the baby and writing poetry, including most of what would become Ariel, at night. The Bell Jar was, in her private letters to her American godmother, a potboiler. She thought of it as a commercial project to bring in money. She used a pseudonym partly to protect her mother, who appears, lightly fictionalized, as Esther's controlling mother in the book. She did not, in 1961 or 1962, consider The Bell Jar her best work. She thought, by the time it was finished, that the poems she was writing in the autumn of 1962, the great late poems, the ones that became Ariel, were the work that would matter. She was, in the strict literary sense, right. Ariel changed 20th century poetry. The Bell Jar did not. But The Bell Jar is the book most readers under 25 now encounter first. It is the book that, for a particular kind of intelligent young woman, has become the book that handed over, for the first time, a language for what she had been feeling. Plath would have been surprised by this. She thought of it as the side project. What did Plath think she was doing? Her journals, which run to almost 700 pages, give an unusually clear answer. She thought that the Depression of 1953, her own real breakdown at 20, the breakdown the novel fictionalizes, had been the central event of her young life. She thought she had survived it incompletely. She thought that writing the novel was a way of going back to the year that had nearly killed her and walking through it again, this time as a writer in control of the room. She thought, by the end of the writing of The Bell Jar, that she had finally put 1953 behind her. She wrote, in a private letter to her American mentor Olive Higgins Prouty in early 1962, that the writing of the novel had led in the light. 2 months later, her husband left her for another woman. 5 months after that, she was alone in London with 2 small children, no functioning heating, and the worst winter England had experienced in a century. The light The Bell Jar had supposedly let in began to go out, very fast. She wrote, in those final months, the poems of Ariel, the most famous of which is Daddy in furious bursts at 4 in the morning before the children woke. Then, on the 11th of February 1963, the Depression of 1953 came back. It had been waiting for 10 years. The novel that she had thought put it behind her had not been enough to keep it away. The Bell Jar is, in the painful retrospective light of February 1963, the book that proves it cannot always be enough to write the thing down. The bell jar metaphor, the sense of being trapped under transparent glass, is, in the novel, lifted from Esther by the slow work of recovery. The novel does not lie about this. It says, clearly, that recovery is possible. Plath, in the book, gives Esther a future. In the world, she could not finally give the same future to herself. What does it mean today, more than 60 years later? Probably this. The Bell Jar is the book to give to someone who is in the early stages of the bell jar themselves. Not because it offers a solution, it does not, but because it offers, in the clearest English prose available, the experience of being seen. The reader who is depressed and reads Esther Greenwood is, for the first time, in the company of someone who has been there. Plath was 30 years old. She had written, by the time she died, the single most accurate account of clinical depression in the English language. That she could not, in the end, use it to save herself does not mean the book has failed. It means that books are not, in themselves, enough. Plath knew this. She wrote it anyway. The Bell Jar is the gift she gave you, from inside the bell jar, before the gas oven. If this changed how you think about Sylvia Plath, subscribe. We break down the most important books ever written, one argument at a time. New video every week. And if this was worth 10 minutes of your life, hit like. It helps the channel more than you think.